It always seems to get to very high or number one on the best songs of all time list, and it's not.
Are you sure though?
No, it's not. It's not the best song of all time. It's
Are
not
you
even
sure?
Yeah.
Because I think it's not my favourite song of all time, but it's among the best.
Hello and welcome to Biggest I Ever Had. Biggest I Ever Had is a limited music series. Each Tuesday, Dan and Dave examine a song from the top 25 biggest singles of all time. As they are based in the UK, they only look at the top 25 biggest selling singles in the UK and not necessarily worldwide. The official charts company uses data for any placement of a song in the ranking. All information is correct at time of recording. Listener discretion is advised. The views and opinions expressed are that of Dan and Dave, respectively, and do not represent the views and opinions of anyone else. Dan and Dave are not affiliated with the official charts company, nor any related music or media company. Profane language is used throughout, and this podcast is not suitable for minors.
Hello.
Hello and welcome to The Biggest I Ever Had with Dan and Dave.
Hello. Hello. How are you today?
Very good, thanks. How are you?
Not too bad. Not too bad. This is probably the last episode we're going to record not in lockdown.
Yeah.
So unless we come out of lockdown in 2nd of December, which who knows at this point.
2nd November.
It's December.
Is it? No, it's 2nd...
No, because November's,
that's now.
like 2 days.
Oh my God.
It's not lockdown for like 24 hours.
God, I've not been paying attention, have I?
Yeah, it's like, we got a lockdown for 24 hours. Like, what are you fucking moaning about? It's only a Sunday.
Stupid people you see on the BBC going, oh my God, what does lockdown even mean? I don't understand what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah, so we've still got another month of it. We haven't even started yet. It starts on Thursday, but it's fine. So we might have to record them remotely.
We'll figure out the logistics.
We'll figure it out. We hopefully should have given people enough episodes for the first 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And if we get really desperate, we've recorded a pilot that we never expected anybody to hear. If we get really desperate, people can hear that.
Yeah.
It's like a bonus episode. So, yeah. So, anyway, apart from that, I'm not too bad today. How are you?
Good.
Right? Yeah.
But imagine if everything was better.
Imagine if everything was better. Which brings us in to today's song, I've Got My Mind Set on You by George Harrison. No, Imagine by John Lennon is today's... this is the 6th episode, so this is what? The 20th biggest selling.
Yeah.
So we're into the top 20. We're into the 70s, which is the earliest we've had an episode.
71, was it?
71 recorded and released, but not released in the UK. Had a US release in 71, UK release in 75. I have facts.
Whoa.
So taken from Wikipedia, so probably not. Now, I imagine the moderator... I'm going to see how many times I was trying to see how many times I could say imagine without noticing. But John Lennon has obsessive fans, and rightly so. I mean, he's John Lennon. If anybody's going to have obsessive fans, it's going to be John Lennon. But I imagine that his Wikipedia page is like scrutinised and constantly like, I think you'll find actually he did not use a 1968 Telecaster on the recording of that song, but actually a 1969 that was which was given to him as a Christmas present because of his old driver, who was actually a man called Clark Wilson. I imagine it's those sorts of people, because like even the sort of like John Lennon songs you've never heard of have incredibly long and detailed Wikipedia pages. Yeah, like ridiculously long, and a huge amount of sources with 1,000,001 biographies. Yeah. So I'm imagining that this information is correct. But yeah, like the Adele episode, it feels almost weird talking about the artist. Yeah. He's John Lennon. What more do you want to say? Yeah, if you don't know who John Lennon is, then I'm surprised. Why are you listening to a music podcast? Yeah,
I'm surprised you managed to even type in the name of the podcast.
Yeah, he's probably, after maybe Michael Jackson, the most famous musician, or maybe Elvis. But I would even say young people today would know who John Lennon is more over Elvis.
Oh, definitely, yeah. John Lennon's still more culturally relevant.
Yeah. In terms of like the most famous musicians of all time, it would probably go, for me, like in terms of famous, this isn't best. Yeah. Michael Jackson, John Lennon, Elvis would probably be the top 3. I can't think of anybody else.
Cliff Richard.
Cliff, obviously. Yeah, Frank Rossi. Francis Rossi. Not Frank Rossi. Frank Rossi's a really shitty tribute act that I just invented. It's only because my granny's probably listening, so a little... little quote shout out just for her.
And then David Bowie.
David Bowie. Again, though, I think people would recognise his name more than they'd recognise the music, which is a shame, but people are stupid. So, yeah.
But he had the benefit of dying in the age of social media.
He did, yeah. So everyone can suddenly pretend like they're a huge fan.
Yeah. Or get tattoos.
Get tattoos.
Of David Bowie's Black Star album.
Exactly. It was my favourite album. Like, just the fact that he made an album
Yeah.
is, like, to me, really deep.
Owen, you shouldn't have a tattoo you've not heard outside.
Yeah.
Hopefully you're listening. And if what I'm going to do, Owen, is I'm going to send you this podcast and then see if you pick up on these comments, because then I'll know if you've actually listened.
Yeah, because it's episode 6. So send Dave the word blancmange. The word blancmange. Then he knows that you've listened. That's the code word. With no context, just say to Dave blancmange, and then he will know, he's listened to episode 6. Imagine that he's listened to it. That's all you need. It's easy if you try. But anyway, yeah, so for those... I don't even know. He was one of the 4 Beatles. I mean, he was also one of the originals, arguably the founder of the Beatles as well. You know, that was a bit of a weird point of contention that they joined my band. I can't do a very good John Lennon voice, but...
Some may say the best of the Beatles.
Some would say the best of the Beatles.
And they would probably be correct in terms of their solo career.
In terms of solo career, yes. And in terms of talent, yes. He also seems like by far the worst person.
Yeah, he does.
He's definitely like... He was the first to have a solo career.
Yeah.
He kind of had a solo career alongside being in the Beatles. Like, I mean, not hugely, like, but he released Cold Turkey, Give Peace a Chance.
The Plastic Ono Band album.
He also wrote 2 books whilst in the Beatles.
Really?
Yeah, I've never read them. I don't think they've anything's ever come of them. But how did he have time? Like, I really don't know. But yeah.
Amphetamines?
Yeah, probably. Like, just keeping going. You know,
lots of coffee,
and went through 2 marriages.
Yeah,
which is
2 children.
2 children. Yeah, he was. It's impressive.
Yeah,
during quite a short period of time. I think actually, Sean was post
70s, mid 70s, wasn't
he? Mid 70s. Yeah, he was post Beatles, but yeah, he kind of time has done weird things to the legacy of John Lennon. Yeah. I think if you'd asked people in the 1980s rank the Beatles in terms of favouritism, John Lennon would have been everybody's hard number 1. Like John Lennon, then I always feel like George has been very popular.
Yeah.
Paul McCartney was the best looking one. I mean, not now. He looks like one. What are those dogs with their face kind of like, you know, the cheeks are all sort of sagging. He looks like that these days.
Yeah.
But you know, he was at the time, and he was still having hits in the 80s. And then I think most people would have said unfairly, Ringo was the worst. And so now I think a lot more people seem to put Ringo first just because he's been the underdog for so long.
I think his personality's the best. I think he's the funny one.
Yeah, and he always seems like a nice person. Yeah. Like, you've not really heard that many stories of him being a dick to people.
No, or beating his wife.
Which we'll get on to. Mr. Hypocrite Lennon.
Yeah.
But yeah, but I think George kind of tends to be people's favourite. Like, generally speaking, George or Ringo tend to be... Paul's kind of overstayed his welcome by still being alive. When Paul dies, we will reevaluate Paul's legacy, and we'll all like Paul a lot more than we currently do.
Really? I can't see myself listening to, like, Wings albums.
Yeah, well, we're going to be talking about Paul in detail at least 3 more times.
Oh, no.
So he does appear 3 more times in the top 25. I will do my opinion on Paul, but I think there was a period where John Lennon was kind of a saint.
Yeah.
He could do no wrong. Nobody sort of like had like anything bad to say about him. He was kind of like this almost like cultish figure. A deity. And then as time has gone on, people have sort of... I don't even think it's like new information has come out. Like, you think of somebody like Jimmy Savile, and no, I'm not comparing John Lennon to Jimmy Savile.
God, you make the worst comparisons.
But... what I mean by that is somebody who died and was well respected and loved when they died, and then after they die, more information comes out and people go, oh, actually, they weren't as great as they were.
I think the thing people need to know is John Lennon was a very flawed character.
He was,
and he had serious issues, like stemming from the fact that his parents died.
Yeah, well, his dad was still alive.
His dad was still alive.
He treated him pretty badly.
Yeah.
Only really came back when the money and the success was there.
And his mum got run over.
Like I said, the comparison I'm trying to make is not that people have learnt new information. I think all of this information was out there. It's just now people go, oh, okay, yeah, but he was also, like, he also did admit to these things, and he did also, like, none of what we're going to talk about today is, like, secret.
No.
It's all common knowledge.
I mean, he sang about it,
He sang about it, yeah. He was pretty open about his flaws as a person. And I guess that kind of makes it better, because at least you can acknowledge, but it doesn't excuse your flaws just because you can acknowledge them. And also, like, I don't want to be too harsh on John Lennon. You know, like you said, he had a rough, not particularly great background.
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't think he set out to be a horrible person necessarily. But I think we were talking, at the time of recording, like, Sean Connery has just died.
Yeah.
And there's been all these sort of like, I mean, when everybody dies, they're suddenly the greatest thing ever.
Yeah.
Sean Connery, who made a couple good movies, but was, in my opinion, pretty terrible in most things. And the movies that I like him in because he's just playing Sean Connery.
Yeah.
I haven't seen The Untouchables, which is what he won an Oscar for, and so I'm commenting on. But from the clips I've seen, it's Sean Connery if he was in a gangster movie.
Yeah.
But that being said, as soon as somebody dies, it's like, oh, he's now the greatest actor of his generation and of all time. And you're like, really? Like, his last movie was The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, like in 2003, I think it was. No one was clamouring to see another Sean Connery movie. He hasn't made movies for 17 years, and I don't feel anyone sat there going, big gap where Sean Connery's like career needs to be.
Yeah, I think what people do is they think about who they think the person is, and you think of John Lennon and you think peace,
and love, only cared about helping people,
And Yoko.
And yes, because I mean, going back to the Sean Connery thing, there's a quite famous clip. You can look it up on the internet. I think it's Barbara Walters. Interviewing Sean Connery in 1987, and he completely justifies beating women.
Yeah.
As long as it's with an open palm. And, you know, sometimes you've tried everything else and they're being hysterical.
Is that Darth Vader?
I can't do impressions. It's what I can say. It's not as bad as my Sylvester Stallone from the 4th episode.
It's certainly not as bad as the Kanye.
No, it's not as bad as my... Kanye, you just sort of have to shout and say this because I am the greatest of all time. That's my Kanye impression.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think that kind of fills the background of who John Lennon is. Again, he has a huge amount of fans, and I'm not discrediting his musical career.
Yeah.
There was a lot of shite.
Yeah, there was.
But there isn't an artist who, if your music catalogue is as big as John Lennon's and there isn't a lot of shite, then you don't exist.
Yeah.
Every single artist on the planet either dies before they can start making loads of shite, or
they live long enough to make
loads of shite, and that's fine.
Yeah.
You know, that's not
I think
criticism, really.
When John Lennon is good, he's very
good. And when he's bad, he's at least entertaining.
Yeah, it's an interesting bad.
Yeah, apart from the last couple albums, towards the late 70s, which were, Double Fantasy, but he did bits here and there, which were kind of just boring, middle of the road. But I think he just sort of became a stay-at-home dad, and he wrote songs about being a stay-at-home dad, which is particularly interesting. Or at least I don't find that particularly interesting. But, you know, I'm not a stay-at-home dad. Maybe it'll mean more to me one day. So going on to, let's imagine this song for a minute, if we can. So the song Imagine, first of all, before we even talk about the song, I've kind of got to address Phil Spector, who I think just by working with Phil Spector was a fuck you by John Lennon.
Yeah.
Those that don't know, obviously the Beatles broke up in 1970. They didn't end on good terms, is a nice way to put it. I don't kind of want to go into the split because every single person has said a different story of what happened over the years. But one of the many things that became an issue between John Lennon and Paul McCartney, allegedly, was the mixing of Let It Be, the Let It Be album, which was the only Beatles album not done by George Martin. Phil Spector dealt with the sort of production, added a load of strings on everything. Yeah. Paul McCartney wasn't happy with that. John Lennon, I mean, I don't know if he was happy with that, but it seemed to be like he took Phil Spector's side and was kind of like, no, I'm going to side with this other producer. Years later, they did Let It Be Naked, where they kind of just undid all of the stuff that Phil Spector did.
It's a better album.
I mean, I've not really ever listened to Let It Be. It's the one I've always skipped. Just because I don't like Let It Be as a song. It's kind of got a similar... My issues with Let It Be as a song are the same as my issues with Imagine. Just replace the word Imagine with Let It Be. And you go, okay, that's what... In fact, Imagine is worse than Let It Be. But we'll get on to that as to why I think...
It's going to be controversial.
I don't know if it is going to be controversial because I think people have kind of come around to my way of thinking. No, because I think a lot of people... Like, there are two... The people who think this is an incredible song have drank the Kool-Aid about John Lennon. So the very fact that you think, like, oh, John Lennon is... You know, he was a flawed person... I think you will understand my arguments about Imagine. Yeah. When I say that.
But you could say... He is asking you to imagine. He's not saying, I am this person.
No, but...
It is the part of his facade. He's saying, imagine if things were better. It's not saying, I am better, be like me.
Yeah, but he never in any way practiced what he preached.
No.
Never, even slightly.
But that's why he's saying, imagine if I could practice what I preach.
You can at least attempt.
Mm-hmm.
So the song itself... was actually part of an 81-minute film called Imagine, which is basically just John and Yoko walking around their mansion.
Yeah.
Which already shows you how tone deaf the songwriting is.
Yeah.
Like, imagine no possessions and me being all like spiritual. Look at my mansion. It's kind of like a 1970s version of Cribs.
Yeah.
Like, look at my mansion.
Look at all the things I have.
I have some dope ass shit in my house.
Look at all this. Look at this white room with nothing. No possessions apart from this like multiple £1,000 grand piano.
Yeah. I've got so much cool shit. He claims he based the song off poems by Yoko Ono from her book Grapefruit, which
great book,
is exactly how I would imagine Yoko Ono would name her book. I don't quite get that because the lyrics are just literally long list of cliches. It feels like he's, you know, those like motivational posters you get?
Yeah.
Literally like live life love.
Yeah.
Although something, it's like that put to music.
Yeah.
Just a long list of like, can't we all just get along? And what I find funny is that like Paul McCartney has written songs like that.
Yeah.
And has been like criticised to hell for it. And it's been like, how, like, look at this out of touch fucking idiot sitting in his farm in Scotland writing peace and love songs. Shut up. And for some reason, John Lennon, who is way worse in terms of the peace and love, like hypocrisy.
Yeah.
I think at least Paul attempted to practice what he preached. Seems to get a free pass. And I don't quite know why. Maybe because he has a more sort of authoritarian voice.
He's got a more authentic voice.
Yeah, so it sounds like, this man, he could be a guru. You know? I think a lot of that, like, 1960s free love, it's all bullshit.
Yeah.
And I think even by 1971, it had become bullshit.
Yeah.
You know, the 60s was over. And when people talk about the 60s, there was kind of an optimism between, like, 64 to 67. And then I think it got, like anything, if there was anything genuine and real about it, it was gone by 71.
Oh, yeah.
You know, if there was some sort of like, oh no, people really cared about each other and it was all about like peace and love and happiness, which, I mean, idiots with like a rose-tinted view of the world probably think there was. If that ever did exist, by 1971, which is when he made this song, that was over.
Yeah.
That was already out of touch.
Glam rock had killed that.
Yeah, it was gone. People were moving on. Like, it was the 1970s now. It was a different decade. It was a different, you know, it was a different everything. It wasn't released as a single in the UK in 1971 when it first came out, which I didn't know because I knew it had recharted, and we'll get to when it recharted. Yeah. It was actually first released in 1975, but it was like a promotional single for Shaved Fish.
The compilation.
The compilation. So, which has some great... I actually think has the best collection of John. You don't really need to delve...
I love the title.
Yeah, I don't feel you need to delve much deeper into John Lennon's back catalogue if you've listened to Shaved Fish.
I think you do. And I think the albums that you need to listen to are Plastic Ono Band and Imagine. And when you were talking about the Beatles splitting earlier, I think it's quite clear what the Beatles actually thought about the split, because the Beatles play on Imagine just without Paul.
Just without Paul, yeah.
Yeah. In fact, there's outtakes from in the Imagine film where John Lennon starts slagging off Paul McCartney during a song, and Ringo just looks over at him and he's just like, "Now then, John, enough of that."
Enough of that. Yeah. So yeah, I can definitely think that was... Yeah. Who knows whether we'll ever really know the truth as to what went on there.
Yeah.
You know, who knows?
But actually, talking about this album, this is a weird one where the album placed higher in the charts than the single.
Than the single, yeah.
Imagine was number one, like...
But again,
the album was number one.
I feel like in the 70s, people bought albums.
Yeah.
Like we were saying earlier, how the opposite is kind of true now.
And I guess you don't get that, because it wasn't released as a single, you can't get that song unless you buy the album.
So if you want to hear I Imagine, you buy the Imagine album and you listen to it as like a collective piece.
Yeah.
And then years later, it's like, oh, we need a single to promote this greatest hits.
It's got to be Imagine.
Got to be Imagine. Cool, we'll put it out. And yeah, and I feel that's basically what it was. It then recharted in 1980, and I don't think it kind of is obvious to anybody who knows what happened to John Lennon why it recharted in 1980. Obviously, he was shot and killed by Mark Chapman in December of 1980.
Yeah.
The song is very quickly re-released, and I don't know if it was a Christmas number one or not, but it was around that time.
Yeah.
I mean, it's credited as recharting in 1980, so I mean, he died like December 3rd or something like that.
It was early December.
So they did a quick turnaround on getting that out. Also, I think it went towards his like charity thing, so I won't like get cross at the re-release because, you know, charity, fine. although Yoko's charity is pretty, I wouldn't say it's sketchy, but it's weird. It is fucking weird.
Okay.
Her charity is about promoting peace. Yeah?
Yeah.
Fine. How do you promote peace? Well, to me, you do things like you help fund, political outreach programs. Yeah. You become an ambassador for various sort of minority groups.
Yeah.
That's the sort of thing. It seems to consist of, I go to a place, I build a big statue that says peace, I get some photos holding the peace sign up, world peace is achieved.
Yeah.
Kind of the same as when they did their Merry Christmas Everybody, where they just put up big posters saying war is over. Kind of completely missing the point of, okay, cool. That hasn't actually had any real impact. It looks good in a photo, but you haven't actually done any what practical positive change have you made? And I don't know the ins and outs of her charity, but from my experience of whenever it gets in the media, and maybe there's a lot of good that is being done behind the scenes that just isn't reported because it's not as sexy. But it seems like a lot of what her charity does is just sort of like activism, which is very different. Activism can mean very different things.
I think Yoko Ono's idea of activism is probably different to most people.
Yes, I
think she thinks that an impact can be made through very different means.
I know that one of the things she did for his, I think it was his 70th birthday, she did the biggest human chain of people linking arms to make out the peace symbol.
Yeah.
Which, again, it's a good press thing, and it's a very good. I mean, John Lennon.
It's a bit pointless, though. Isn't
it's pointless, though. I mean, they were always a bit like that, though, John and Yoko, because when Paul McCartney or allegedly Paul McCartney pulled them up for their, they had their bed in.
Yeah.
When he just stayed in bed in Amsterdam, and he kind of said, okay, John, great, but what change have you actually done? You haven't actually achieved anything other than you sat in bed for a few days and the photographers were there and everyone took photos of you. And his response was, it's much better for me to get my name on the front of the newspaper with the word peace in the headline than not. Yeah. And that's kind of true. But also, really? It's not actually helping the world. But it makes you, and I think that's my big problem is it's all about you.
Yeah.
All of Yoko and John's activism was about helping them. About helping them feel good. How can I feel good helping other people? Instead of, how can I help other people? So if there is positive things coming out of it, good. But at the same time, I think there should always be a caveat of, yes, but they were also wanting to... They were doing it for self-promotion as well.
But they were very blatant about that. If you listen to God on Plastic Ono Band, he lists literally every single person that anyone ever cares about, and then says, "I don't believe in them. I just believe in me and Yoko.
Me and Yoko, Yoko and me."
That's reality.
Yeah,
fantastic song. Which I think that's his best song. I don't think Imagine's his best.
I don't think Imagine's best song. I think Cold Turkey's the best one.
Cold Turkey's fantastic. Is that on Plastic Ono Band?
Yeah, I think
that was 68, I think.
Yeah, because it was meant to be on the White Album. But they turned it down because they had so many gems for the White Album.
God.
Obladi Oblada was just so much better.
Number 9.
See, I like Revolution 9 because at least there was nothing like it at the time.
Yeah.
Although,
do you know what's weird? If you go into bars or pubs with jukeboxes, it will have Revolution number 9 on, because what they do is they just subscribe to the top 50 albums ever made. So it has all of this weird avant-garde stuff. So I've done it before. I've gone into a bar and put Revolution 9 on the jukebox just to see how long it takes for someone to be like, right, no, unplug.
Fuck this shit,
yeah. Yeah. I got quite considerable
Queue it up 10 times.
Yeah.
Just
I did that once, so just play again.
Just plays Revolution 9 over on him.
But it's just background noise, really.
Yeah.
What really people don't really like is something like Heroin by the Velvet Underground. Yeah. And then they run to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But back to Imagine.
Back to Imagine. But yeah, so I think... Obviously, it recharted in 1980. I think also when it recharted in 1980, in my opinion, again, I'm saying all this in retrospect, and I might be overanalyzing things, but that's kind of the point of the podcast, because we could just sum it up in one sentence. I think the song kind of had a second meaning when he died.
Yeah.
And it became less an anthem for whatever the real intention was, maybe world peace. Yeah. It's kind of not really a peace song. It's kind of just a, what if everything was good song?
It's a series of suggestions.
Yeah.
That make you... They're just pleasant.
Yeah. But I don't think there's a world where... I don't think that somebody was sat there one day and went, oh, you know what? It would be good if we didn't have war.
No.
I don't think it's a conclusion that people needed Oh, thanks, John. I've been worrying, like, what if we didn't have to worry about like paying rent all the time?
Yeah.
That would be so much better. Oh my God, thank you for pointing that out to me. You know, but I think it kind of became an anthem for him. So I feel like a lot of people love Imagine because they associate it with...
Yeah.
And they don't even associate it with John Lennon. They associate it with the concept of John Lennon.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's how it seems to have happened. It happened a lot. I don't think it was as much when he was alive, because I think he spent a lot of time in the 1970s undoing a lot of the goodwill he had from the 60s. So there's like things of like 1976, like in the middle of the 70s, of places like refusing to let him in because he was just a bit of an arsehole. But I think as soon as he died, suddenly he became a different person. Yeah. Like in the media. And it became like, it was like Martin Luther King died. Yeah. It was like, you know, when Nelson Mandela died, it was like, look at all these great political achievements. Like, he didn't actually achieve anything. Yeah. He was a great pop star. He was a great songwriter. And by all means, you can create a myth around his songwriting and his music. And I have no issue with that. You know, because if anybody deserves it, it's probably John Lennon in terms of his musical output. But don't immediately latch on to like, well, he was this incredibly peaceful, loving person, because he was not. No. And he was quite open about the fact that he was not. No. You know, it was, like I said, none of what the criticism I have are A, criticisms that he didn't fully admit to himself, or B, wasn't public knowledge when he was alive. I think, do you want to talk about like his relationships with women? Oh, God. There's a lyric on... It's getting better. Yeah. I used to be mad at my woman. I beat her and I kept her apart from the things that she loved. Yeah, and Cynthia has, over the years, basically confirmed that. Yeah. He has also... He read... There was some book on women's feminism that he read like in the mid-70s, and he broke down crying because he was like, I have treated women like every single one of the... And he talks about it on the Dick Gaveritt show, so I'm not saying something that you're like, oh, well, how do you know that, Dan? You can watch footage of him on YouTube talking about how, like, I was a chauvinist. He had a girlfriend in art school. Yeah. And when they would have sex, he would say, should we go for a 10-mile jog? And it was like a joke. And one time she tells a story about how, like, he said to me, do you want to go for a 10-mile jog? Like, there were other people in the room. And she said no. So he just punched her in the face. Wow. And, I mean, again, an ex-girlfriend from, like, 50 years ago could be lying. Yeah. But considering he said multiple things throughout the years that, like, he did a Playboy interview where he was just kind of, like, admitted, I've hit women, I've done this. There was a big controversy in the 90s because this biographer told this story about how he once burnt Yoko's hand on an oven. Wow. Yoko has refuted that story. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I'm assuming the biographer, whoever he was, did some sort of due diligence because he would have got sued like hell. And as far as I know, a lawsuit didn't go on. Again, it might just be hearsay. Yeah. But the other thing to bear in mind is Yoko does have a vested interest in the myth of John Lennon existing. I mean, since he's died, you'd think the man was a saint. Yeah. They were separated for like 4 years. And the Lost Weekend. Yeah. So she makes it out like, our marriage was perfect and everything was always perfect. And I don't want to be somebody who's like imagining what someone else's marriage is like because I don't know. I wasn't there. Yeah. You know, and that feels... But he spent like... It feels a little bit gross. Months at the other end of the country having sex with like another woman. Yeah, and he was quite open about it. So that's why I feel like it's fair game to address it because of the fact that he was so open about it in his lifetime. But I think he knew that he was flawed. Yeah. And that's why he went through all that, the scream therapy with Yoko. Yeah. And again, like I said, I don't see an issue with him necessarily. I see an issue with the people who overlook that. Yeah. It's like you pick the parts of the person that you don't like and you just ignore them. And that's not healthy. Yeah. Especially because no artist will ever live up to the person you make in your head. And so arguably there will never be another artist like John Lennon because nobody is that perfect. Because it's not John Lennon that's perfect, it's the idea of John Lennon that's perfect. And I think it helps, well, I say it helps, but the fact that he died like 40 years ago, when there wasn't like that much prevalence of knowledge about his actual attitudes towards women. And it was a lot easier to hide stuff. He was, yeah. You know, and not only that, like most people were doing stuff like that. Now, if somebody came out and said, I openly hit my girlfriend, that'd be the end of them. Yeah, like if Chris Brown was shot like tomorrow. Yeah, if Chris Brown was shot, I don't think people are suddenly going to be like, oh wow. What a saint. Yeah, what a saint. No, because everyone knows what happened. Yeah, like even if Chris Brown from this moment spent the next 20 years being like Mother Teresa and gave all his possessions away and did nothing but activism and worked incredibly hard. Yeah. when he died, it would still say in his obituary, oh yeah, and he did like beat up Rihanna that time, well, which is fair enough. I'm not saying Chris Brown shouldn't have that. He should, but it's a bit of a double standard in terms of like, so you won't do it for Chris Brown, but you will do it for John Lennon.
Yeah.
Just because you like his music more.
Yeah.
And that's odd to me.
But it's also because at the time no one knew, it wasn't like...
Yeah, it wasn't...
speculated about widely on the internet.
No, what do you think about his political activism? Because I think it's this completely pointless type of countercultural activism which achieved nothing.
I don't think he achieved anything.
If anything, like the opposite happened. I feel like people course-corrected during the 80s because of like the stupid hippies of the 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
I feel like people were like, nope, done with this shit. It doesn't work. Like, you're talking out your arse.
Well, punk was a reaction to this, wasn't it?
Punk was a reaction to, like, fuck these hippies. They don't know what they're talking about. There's a funny thing, actually, when I was looking into this, even, like, in the 70s, John Lennon kind of acknowledged that Imagine was bullshit. Yeah. There was a running joke between him and Elton John. This came out quite recently. Elton John it might have been last year or beginning of this year, released his autobiography. He talks about his time with John Lennon. They used to hang out a lot in New York. And one of the things he talks about is how there was a joke between him and John Lennon where he sent him a birthday card once that said, imagine 6 apartments. It isn't hard to do. One is full of fur coats and another's full of shoes. And apparently John Lennon responded with, nowadays that would probably be better lyrics.
Yeah.
Basically acknowledging like that they were incredibly materialistic. Yeah. They loved going shopping. Elton John talks about in his autobiography that like he thought he had a shopping problem because he was buying so many clothes and jewellery and things. And he said, but then I'd go around John and Yoko's house and be like, oh no, I'm not as bad as them at least.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that kind of tells you everything, really. Even in the 70s, it was kind of like, yeah, it was a nice buzz phrase, but I've moved on. What do you think John Lennon would be like if he was still alive now? I think he'd be insufferable.
It's hard to say, really.
I don't know. He's one of these people who he would be one of two things. He would be an extreme on either side, the left or the right.
Yeah.
He would have either have become the most overly sensitive, left-wing, everything's a drama person, but I think that's the easy option. I actually think he would have ended up being a Trump supporter.
Really?
Because it's the opposite of what you wanted him to do. John Lennon, to me, feels like he was always counterculture and pushing against whatever people expected or wanted. Nowadays, the ideals and the things that John Lennon are saying are actually pretty standard. You know, we're not like... imagine a world where people treat each other right. Yeah, that's what we're aiming for. You know, he's not really like railing against any sort of authority. The world has kind of caught up with his beliefs. And just from things I've read about him, I imagine therefore he would be the complete opposite because that's the opposite of what you'd expect of him.
It's interesting that you say that because his son Sean Lennon is surprisingly on the right side of politics.
That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. I was looking at his Twitter and there's an awful lot of suggestion. Like he says that he's both woke and based, but you can see that there's certain aspects of woke culture that he's very critical of.
Yeah, I feel like,
and I really like Sean Lennon. I think he's a really good artist.
He did a radio podcast quite recently for his birthday, I think.
He did a recent cover of Mambo Sun from Electric Warrior.
Oh, there you go.
It sounds like Mambo Sun, but if an Asian John Lennon was singing, which I guess it is.
It kind of is, yeah. But yeah, I think I always go to this question: why do you think it sold so many copies? I mean, we've covered it. It's a John Lennon song.
Yeah.
Even ignoring the fact that it's Imagine, a John Lennon song sold a lot of copies, especially like around that time when he was at his peak.
And I think the lyrics in particular are something where someone would hear those lyrics and everyone thinks, oh, I am personally a very moral person and I think that things should be better. So it's something that people will just identify with.
Yeah, I think
people always think that they're peaceful and all loving. Yeah.
I put here that I think it's like it's become like an anthem for peace.
Yeah,
it becomes like the cliched. You need a song to tell everybody to get together and save the world.
Yeah. But I think it's more complex than that because it's not saying if all these things were different, everything would be better. Again, it's just saying imagine if this was the case.
It's about how people perceive the song, though, and I don't think that people go that deep. I mean, we've done that with a lot of these songs. There's kind of two meanings. There's the meaning the artist meant and what the song actually means, and then there's what people interpret the song to mean. And I think there's another one of them where it might mean something very different, but people take it to mean, oh, it's an anthem for peace and how we should all love each other. It's great.
Out of everything on the list so far, I think this is the one that you could probably spend a lot of time analysing.
Oh, God, yeah. And that people have.
Yeah.
And then that's one thing, I'm scanning over a lot of things because I don't want to retread things that 1,000,000,001 people have said before.
Yeah.
It's kind of more an overview. It's kind of, I mean, it's still got influence. As we're talking right now, this year was the year that those celebrities, Gal Gadot, who's Wonder Woman, did a cover. Incredibly tone deaf.
Incredibly unnecessary.
Celebrities to the rescue.
Yeah.
Like, oh, my grandma's just died. Well, the one from Bridesmaids and Gal Gadot have done a little song for you on the Instagram. So cheer up, son. You know, like, it's bollocks. And literally, it couldn't be more out of touch. Like, John Lennon recorded the entire film in his mansion.
Yeah.
So I guess it already kind of has a precedent for it. But at least he was the first to do it. And, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
But watching these celebrities walk around their mansions singing, like, it's so difficult being locked in this 9-bedroom, like, 50,000 square foot mansion. What am I? I don't know whether to play tennis or, like,
we're all in it together,
go jet skiing.
Even though your livelihoods are all probably ruined by the economic catastrophe, but I'm just in my mansion.
I'm in my mansion, so it's fine.
So I can make these virtue signalling cries while being relatively safe.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of we say, like, what's this song going to be like in 20 years' time? Same as it is now.
Yeah.
The only thing that slightly annoys me, it always seems to get to very high or number one on the best songs of all time list, and it's not.
Are you sure though?
No, it's not. It's like, not the best song of all time. It's not
you
even
sure?
Yeah.
Because I think it's not my favourite song of all time, but it's probably like among the best.
Nah, there's a
what
billion.
would you think the best song of all time
I don't know, because
I'd
I'd have to think about that, but I could tell you it wouldn't be Imagine.
But what else would you say?
It depends how you judge it. I mean, again, I think it's very surface level. So
lyrically, if you read it just the lyrics, it's good. I think it's a really simple but very suggestive song. I think it's deeper than a regular pop song.
Yeah, deeper than maybe your average pop song.
It's a stunningly played piano song.
You might think that,
and
you're probably in the majority. So I'm not going to argue, but I don't. And I also. The other thing I don't like is the way people are stuck in the 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
And there's this treatment of like, well, whenever we're going to make a list of all time, well, automatically we'll just copy and paste. Imagine will be number one or in the top 5. Yeah. And I don't like that because I think we should always be trying to improve.
Yeah.
And people have this weird idea with music where, well, everything good has already happened. And I'm like, well, then should we just stop making music? Because you're acting like, well, no one's ever going to make an album as good as Revolver or Sgt. Pepper's. So what's the point?
Yeah.
And you're like, what? Like, shut up. You know, and I mean, that's part of the reason. I mean, we are doing a podcast, which is a retrospective of music. So we are now part of the problem.
Yeah.
But I think there was a lot of mythologizing things and going like, this is the greatest thing ever. And I'm not necessarily saying about Imagine, but that kind of thing. And that kind of grates me the wrong way, especially as time goes on and like it's people that are really old. Because I mean, if you enjoyed Imagine when it came out, you're an old person. I don't think that's controversial to say. If you in 1975 went and bought a copy, you are old, and therefore, by some stretch of the imagination, you are slightly out of touch with culture, and that's a nice way of putting it. So
but then the messages of Imagine resonate still today.
I don't know if they do, though. No, because I think people analyse things and think a bit deeper than that these days.
Yeah.
I think
you can go in as deep as you want.
We live in a slightly like cynical post 9/11 world where I think people are a bit more like, I want something more than that. I think it worked in the 60s when people like had easy answers for things. You know, bad people stopped being bad. And so now, like, who even are the bad people?
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. I think it's a different world now.
Yeah, it's a different podcast.
It's a different podcast, yeah. That's a bit more philosophical. Yeah. Like I mean, that's the thing with Imagine. Of the songs we've done so far, you could do a podcast probably just on Imagine.
Yeah.
And every week you imagine from a different cultural perspective and go, well, what if we consider Imagine as, you know, a feminist anthem? Or what if we consider it as, you know, a philosophical undertaking of African rights? You know, there's multiple different ways that you could. So, and I mean, I'll give it that. It can be, it's much deeper than your average song.
I, at this moment, cannot think of a song that has been like a top charting single that is better than Imagine. I mean, I'm just putting it out there.
I definitely can, because Imagine wouldn't even be there for me. But I can't name one. No, because I can't name one on the spot.
You can't, because it doesn't exist.
I'm sure it does.
It doesn't exist.
You know,
there's nothing that's had such a big cultural
Not even
impact.
Space Oddity?
No, Space Odyssey, nowhere near the amount of impact.
Really? It's kind of ushered in so many different things. And that to me is like, it still sounds futuristic.
Does it?
Yes.
I think it sounds dated.
No, it still sounds futuristic. It sounds like a time that never really happened. So Imagine sounds very much of its time.
I think it's timeless.
We could talk about this for hours. Shall we go on to
Tenuous Kanye?
Tenuous Kanye. Final segment of the show. This is where I basically try and link this song and this artist to Kanye West. Now, I believe Kanye was born in like 1977, so he was 3 years old when John Lennon died. So unsurprisingly, there is no link directly between John Lennon and Kanye West, because there wouldn't really. It would be strange if you'd be questioning what John Lennon was up to if there was a direct link.
Yeah.
However, Yoko Ono has come out and said that John would have loved Kanye West's music, but she kind of seems to say that every couple of years, because she said the same about Lady Gaga.
Yeah.
She sort of every few years sort of just comes out and goes, yeah, John would have loved this.
To try and stay relevant.
Yeah, and also like as if she's the voice of John on this planet.
Yeah.
You know, okay. But one sort of direct comparison you can kind of draw between the two. Last year, Kanye West released an album called Jesus is King.
Yeah.
It's not a very good album, but he did release an album called Jesus King. On that album is a song called Water. That song samples a Yoko Ono song from 1972 called We're All Water, which was produced by John Lennon. So arguably a John Lennon recording has directly appeared on a Kanye West, and it was released as a single. I think it was the only single from that album. So yeah, directly was. So yeah, so he has appeared on a Kanye West song, even if it was from Beyond the Grave, in some capacity. It just says produced by. It's not a particularly famous Yoko Ono song, I don't think. Yeah. So I couldn't find a huge amount more information other than he produced it. But I'm sure he probably played guitar or something on it, and that appeared on the Kanye song. Yeah. So yeah, you can draw a link between the two.
You can.
But yeah, that's it. End of episode 6.
Don't forget to like this if that's a thing. Is that a thing on podcasts? I think
you can rate us and you can do a review, but you know that opens a can of worms, because I don't want all the Survivor fans, when I was saying that we're a boring band, slagging me off. So
no, we do. All publicity is good publicity, as Robin Thicke knows.
They can get you cancelled though. I don't want to be cancelled by Survivor fans.
They probably don't know what Twitter is.
What is there? They don't know how to do anything.
No.
But yeah, and
subscribe
and get others to subscribe as well. If you're enjoying this, let us know. And if there's things you don't like, let us know. We can change it. The structure isn't set. But yeah, thank you and goodbye.